Okay, so my turn. Hi, I'm Olivia LaRocchia, and today I'll be filling you guys in a bit on Anne Petry's life, how it's referenced here and there throughout the novel, and of course, how all of that can connect to our theme of A Dream Deferred. So to begin, just going to show a few pictures of her. Anne Petry was born on October 12, 1908, and was raised in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. Her grandfather was a runaway slave who came to Connecticut around the time of the Civil War, and her family has been born and raised there for 4 generations since. At the time of her youth, her family, one of the only Black families in the community at the time, owned the local pharmacy and lived in the house attached to it. Here's a picture of it today. It's actually a bed and breakfast and a gelato shop now. Her father was a pharmacist, and her mother and aunts and uncles had a plethora of jobs, with some being entrepreneurs and business owners, some landowners. And because of this, Anne grew up quite comfortably, for the most part, being able to afford hair ribbons, new shoes, warm meals, and college. This is something that many Black families living below the poverty line did not get to experience at the time. Nevertheless, Petry most definitely encountered racism, whether it was firsthand through encounters at school or hearing the stories that her family shared with her. Petry went to the University of Connecticut, became a pharmacist, and worked at the family pharmacy for over 7 years. However, in an interview she gave later on in her life, she explains that she was not happy counting pills and would often write while working at the pharmacy. And she dreamed of becoming a writer. In 1938, Petry married her husband George, and they moved to Harlem, New York, 116th Street specifically, and made her dream come true. She worked for a newspaper there, which was one of a few jobs that she had while in Harlem. But she still did all kinds of writing. She wrote short stories, such as On Saturday the Siren Sounds at Noon, but she always found herself imagining the lives of the people in the news. This seems to be where her passion for fiction came from. Seeing all of the horror that racism brought to the streets of Harlem, especially for a Black woman, she was inspired to write The Street, which captured the forces that work against the Black female. While working, she wrote The Street and submitted it to apply for a literary fellowship award. She won, was awarded $2,500, and her novel became a bestseller. While this was a great thing for Petry, it also terrified her. She gained some fame, and she was getting so much attention, too much attention, that her and her husband felt forced to move back to Old Saybrook, Connecticut. Petry stopped giving interviews and unlisted her phone from the phone book. Since then, Petry's life remained mainly private and unknown until 2017, when many of Petry's writings and a diary of hers was found in an ice cream cone tin in the old family's house. Her daughter Elizabeth is currently using them to make a documentary about Petry's life. I feel this really attests to how Harlem changed Petry forever. She did not feel safe standing out from the rest of the crowd, even as it brought comfort for her and her family. It allowed her to be able to move away, to continue writing, but she did not feel safe in Harlem, and she did not feel safe being in the public eye. So with that, I'm going to move on to connections of Petry's life to the novel, and A Dream Deferred. So, the way I perceived it through my reading and research, Anne Petry's life serves as a sort of comparison to Ludi's, and really shows how Ludi's dreams are deferred through lack of opportunities that she was given And you can see this in the comparison between the opportunities that Anne had and that Anne was given versus what Ludi has and what Ludi is given. And you can see the different outcomes of their lives. So for the first connection, we're going to be talking about Connecticut. So Ludi worked in Connecticut, and there was reference in the novel about the old Saybrook train station. This seems to be an homage to Petrie's hometown. And to go even further with it, this is possibly something Petrie could have seen in her life. You know, a Black woman like Ludi, separated from her family, just trying to make ends meet. Anne, for work, was able to be surrounded by her family for 7 years, working at home in her family business. And she had a choice to be able to leave that situation when she wanted to and move to Harlem. And Ludi had no choice but to leave her family to go work. So right there, we already see just the fact that Anne had a choice to be able to leave and go find a job in New York versus Ludi's being forced into leaving her family just so that they could pay the rent and put food on the table. Another connection is that Ludi gets an apartment on 116th Street. However, when she moves in, she's on her own with her son and must constantly face that this is a vulnerability for her. Being a single woman makes her basically a moving target for every man, Black or white. And just the fact that she's Black already is giving her a disadvantage. So when Anne moves to Harlem, she also lives on 116th Street. But unlike Ludi, though, she has the security of living with her husband, and she has no child to worry about, which allows her a lot more freedom than Ludi. And she gets to choose a job that she enjoys for the most part. It's at least in writing, while Ludi never really had the chance to work a job that she loved. The singing was taken down really quick for her. So one more comparison is that Ludi constantly feels unsafe in her apartment and thinks only of ways to be able to leave it and raise her son in a safe environment where there's grass for him to play instead of the concrete of the dangerous street outside. In comparison, when Petrie gains fame from her novel, she flees back to Saybrook, Connecticut, where she feels safe and eliminates contact from outsiders. She escapes the streets of Harlem and does everything in her power to ensure that it cannot haunt her, which is all Ludi wanted. For both of the women, they feel a space of their own, separated from the life in Harlem, would give them a sense of comfort. And the comparison is Anne Petrie was able to leave and Ludi was not. And without spoiling the ending, we see that it doesn't end up well for Ludi. Unfortunately, Petrie gets to live a mostly peaceful life. So Anne Petrie had a successful life despite challenges that she had to overcome as an author and a Black woman. Along with hard work, Petrie was given opportunities that her life allowed her by having a stable family, income, a husband, and a special talent that allowed her to do what she loved for a living. All of these things allowed her to move to where she wanted to be, and when she felt unsafe, she was able to leave her dangerous environment and lead a peaceful life. Ludi Johnson, on the other hand, was not given the same opportunities as Petrie. She had a father who did more harm to her life than good. Her job made her family fall apart because her husband could not get one. And she had to take care of her son as a single Black woman in Harlem. No matter how hard she worked, she could not get out. So it is through these comparisons of Ann Petrie and Ludi that we see that through hard work alone, Ludi could never have protected her and her son from the streets of Harlem like she had dreamed that she could. And thus, Ludi's dream never came true and remains a dream deferred.
Hi, my name is Calvin Collins, and I'm going to present the prevalent themes in the street by Ann Petrie. The most prevalent theme is a dream deferred, and this theme is highlighted by the sub-themes of classism and sexism. A dream deferred. Zora Neale Hurston, Their Eyes Are Watching God, starts off with a powerful quote. Ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. For some, they come in with the tide. For others, they sail forever on the horizon. Never out of sight, never landing until the watcher turns his eye and away in resignation. His dream mocked to death by time. That is the life of men. Now, women forget all those things they don't want to remember and remember everything they don't want to forget. The dream is the truth. Then they act and do things accordingly. This quote sums up Ludi Johnson's life perfectly. The Street by Ann Petrie is about a young Black woman's dream deferred by uncontrollable circumstances thrusted upon her. Ludi Johnson's dream deferred. Petrie's theme of a dream deferred is highlighted by the sub-themes of classism and sexism. Similar to Miss Hurston's quote, Ludi never stood a fighting chance in achieving her dream, which was to leave the streets and provide a better life for her son. Ludi was forced to stay grounded in reality and was not allowed to dream of a better life for her family. Ann Petrie conveys Ludi Johnson's inevitable defeat to the streets by describing in detail their living environment and by the way Ludi processes their circumstances. While Ludi is processing the fact that Bub has been taken, the reader is allowed to hear her inner thoughts, where she states, "Only you forgot. You forgot you were Black and you underestimate the streets outside here. It never occurred to you that Bub might find those small dark rooms just as depressing as you did. And then, of course, there wasn't any other place for you to live except in a house like this." Ludi realizes that because of her gender and her race, she would never be able to achieve a better life, and that is the reality that she must live with. Sexism. When Bub was taken, Ludi desperately needed financial assistance and she goes to Boots for help. Boots tries to sell her to Judo in order for her to get money to regain her son. This angers Ludi because Judo hadn't want to pay for her singing, but was willing to pay for sex from her. At this moment, Ludi realized she would never be able to escape the streets because the world only sees her for her body and for sex. To the right, I have the social hierarchy of the society at that time, which I also think reigns true today. At the very top, you have white men, and below that, you have white women, and below white women, you have white trash. And below that, you have Black women, Black men, followed by Black women. Because of Ludi Johnson's intersectionality of being Black and being a woman, she's at the bottom of the totem pole, forced to carry the burdens of the world and work her way up in order to achieve her dream. But because of the limitation society sets on Black people and especially on Black women, she was unable to achieve her dream of having a better life for herself and for her son.